AfterBuzz TV, starting place to the likes of WWE female superstars Cathy, Kelley, Sonya, Deville, and Zelina Vega proudly presents Women's Wrestling Weekly, the world's first podcast and YouTube series dedicated exclusively to women's wrestling, featuring all the latest news as well as interviews with top superstars in the industry. And now, AfterBuzz TV's own gorgeous lady of wrestling, TK Trinidad.
Bonjour, you're watching Women's Wrestling Weekly, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. My name is TK Trinidad, aka Canadian Assassin, and I am not alone. I have my amazing co-host with me. She hails from the Valley. She is the farmer's daughter. Please welcome Emily May.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, hey. And you can currently see him on his couch doing the intro for the Melina walkout. Please welcome Bryant Santos.
Hello, I love a good entrance and some entrance music, so I'm ready to talk everything women's wrestling.
And thank you for joining me. And we have an amazing guest like we do every week. She is the Gladiator of Geeks. She's the protector of the small, the champion of the outcast, and Rogue Women's War champion. Please welcome Riley Shepard.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So kind of let's get into it. You have been in on the scene for a minute. Kind of tell us about like why you got started and how you got started.
So I am actually kind of new to wrestling, not only just being a wrestler, but also watching wrestling. I didn't actually start watching wrestling until I was around 25 years old. I actually was a 911 dispatcher and a police officer before this. And when I was a police officer, I decided it wasn't quite the right fit. And it was around the same time I was starting to watch wrestling and the Four Horsewomen on NXT, especially Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks. And so watching them and being unhappy with my current job, I went, I need to be a part of this. And I reached out to a couple of local training schools, including the Monster Factory in South Jersey. And Danny Cage pretty much said, I think it was like a Tuesday night. He said, we have training on Thursday, so stop in. And I emailed him back and said, I'm there. And he said, that's the first step. Most people would make some sort of excuse. And I was like, no, I want this. So I showed up on Thursday. I had a tryout. That was May 2016. And then the rest is history. You have the Gladiator with Geeks now.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's so amazing that you just like dropped kind of the career path that you chose and chose something completely different. What was that moment when you were training for the first time that you knew this was the right thing for you to do right now?
I'm pretty sure I knew that night. We had the tryout pretty much consisted of running around the ring and taking what we call some bumps, including a flip bump, which I'm a gymnast, or I used to be a gymnast from the time I was 7 to the time I was 18. And the person showing me was like, you might not be able to do this. This is a little bit harder. Most people are a little bit scared of this. And she did the flip and she landed on her back. And I went, ow. I just did it and went, you know what, I'm home, because for a long time, I had gymnastics filling that void of being athletic and being able to push myself to the limit. And I didn't really have that in my life at that time. And pro wrestling completely filled that for me.
So tell me, like, your former coworkers and family and friends, when you told them, you know what, I'm over this police thing. I'm going to become a wrestler. Because even up until 2016, especially women's wrestling, it's not as big as it is today. Like there's such a change that's happened in the last 2 years. So, what was that like? What was that experience?
So my coworkers completely thought I was crazy. And I think a lot of them thought I'd be back within like 6 months or something, that this was just going to be one of those things that I needed to try and realize that it wasn't what I needed as a career. My mom, I think, was the biggest person who I had to convince, because she was worried about me getting hurt, especially with my past. I've had injuries from the police academy. I fractured my knee. I've injured both knees from gymnastics. So I'm not like this new brand shiny new toy that has no injuries in her past. I'm coming in with a career and with a body who's been through the ringer a little bit. But I told her I could either be wrestling which I love to do, or I could be out on the street in a bulletproof vest with the gun where I have no idea what's coming at me minute to minute, second to second, and I have to react. And I think when I kind of put it in that term, she's like, all right, you can wrestle. But my husband, at the time, I think we were engaged when I decided to make that switch. And we were actually planning a wedding. And he was the one who got me into it to begin with. And when we were watching it after we got married, and I said, okay, I want to do this. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, well, okay, how are we doing this? What are we doing? He's more of the feet on the ground type person. And I'm more of, okay, I want to do this. This is my passion. I'm going to go after it full force. And he's like, all right, we need to plan this. And he's been fully supportive since it. I call him my husbander, because he does a lot of my graphics. Luckily, and my video editing, he helps a lot with that. So he's been fully supportive from get-go.
Oh my
I
God.
love
these
that.
guys
I
on
love
the
that.
team,
I
'cause
love
your
that.
graphics are amazing. The graphics, your website, I went on your website and I'm just like, oh, this
Yeah.
is legit. I love
Watching
it.
all your matches, like it's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, he made that for me. He's more of that technologically advanced type of person. I'm so happy I have in my corner. But yeah, he did all of that, the website and graphics and everything.
I would love to know, you have this great look, and I was kind of stalking all of your socials and looking at the evolution of your brand, and I would love to know your inspiration of how you kind of crafted your look and your kind of your character and what inspired you.
Oh, for sure. So I kind of knew who I wanted to be from the beginning of wrestling. I did go to Danny Cage and I talked to him a little bit about it, but he's like, yeah, you do you have creative control. I used to be in LARPing, which is a lot of it has come from live action role playing. My character there was a deep elf rune caster. And so I took parts of that. I also play video games, Dragon Age and Mass Effect. So I took parts of that. My last name Shepard is actually Commander Shepard from Mass Effect. And just, I've always been a sci-fi geek. I've always been into, Renaissance fair and everything like that. So I've taken things from books that I've read, movies that I've watched, like Lord of the Rings, and then took all of that and put that into my personality, which is I stand for the silent because of my past in bullying. For a very long time, I was silent while I was being bullied until I finally found my voice. So now the Gladiator of the Geeks stands for everyone who felt like an outcast, everyone who is a geek, no matter what that geekdom is. And she will be your voice if you ever need it.
I love that so much. I want to ask you, because I do have also a gymnastics background, and you mentioned a little bit about how you incorporated your background into the flip and the bump. But is there any other way that you're using your gymnastics in your wrestling to this day?
I feel like gymnastics gave me a really good background to begin with, in strength in my core and everything like that. There are certain things in training, we do headstands for a minute and I just go up and I have no issue because it's my background. I do a handstand half turn to my knees, which I've done on Women of Honor. I did that to Stella Gray. So there's certain things that I do incorporate. I do flip around a bit. But other than that, it's really just the basics. And I feel like the discipline that I learned in gymnastics that I use in wrestling all the time.
So
Definitely.
now, do you carry that? You've had an extensive gymnastics career, and then you were in law enforcement. Did you combine any of that into like your training or your character?
Law enforcement hasn't really helped all too much. I think maybe just being a 911 dispatcher actually helped me because I did commentary for 10 months while I had ACL surgery and was out on injury. So I feel like that helped me a lot on commentary for sure, because you're reacting to things and things in the ring and speaking about that. So law enforcement and 911 dispatching, that's really all that helped with that, whereas gymnastics helps with the training and just the basics and being able to move, and the footwork of being confident around the ring and running and not tripping over yourself, which I still do. But I can't imagine if I didn't have a gymnastics background how often I trip.
So tell us, this This Zoom stuff is funny. So we're here, we're in Corona, we're all locked up. What are you doing in your time?
So right now I don't have a job because I actually left my full-time job at the end of January, January 24th, because I had my first match back after being out for about almost a year from my ACL on January 31st. And I was like, I'm not young. I need to put my head in the game and just travel and do everything right off the bat. So I left my full-time job of being a clerk at that point to wrestle. So right now I don't have a job, but I am still training. I'm still training at home. I do have a personal trainer who I train with 2 days a week, who keeps me in line, and I'm still meal prepping and everything. I have reached out to Suicide Prevention Hotline because I figured since I have downtime that I could volunteer for that, and I do have a background. Unfortunately, they're not training until June, as far as I'm aware, or they're going to kind of touch base in June and see where they are. But that's really, I'm kind of trying to do that, and I'm looking about possibly starting a vlog. We shall see. Try to be creative. Yeah, you got downtime, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know it's so hard to figure out what you're doing from home and kind of getting that creative outlet out there. So say like all of this is over and we're back to wrestling. What is your game plan moving forward in the next few months?
My game plan is pretty much the same as what it was a month ago when I literally returned and only had a month of wrestling. And so it's pretty much you come back with everything that you can. So I want to be in the best tip-top shape I can. I don't want to miss a step when I'm back in the ring. And I'm going to be reaching out to all of the promotions that I've worked with already, Free Combination, NYCW, Rogue Women Warriors, and just keep that momentum going, and hopefully I can snowball that into traveling more, which is what I wanted to do to begin with. Travel around the country and hopefully maybe travel to Japan and then go from there. But that's the same game plan I had before I have now. I guess my ACL injury, silver lining, it got me prepared for what's going on now.
There you go. Dream matches. Who's like your top 5 matches? If you can, like, it doesn't matter what promotion, anywhere in the world, who are your top 5?
So I would like to face Nyla Rose again. I did face her in Warriors of Wrestling, and it happened to be when I was still working through my ACL injury. It literally was a few weeks before I went out for the surgery. So I'd like to face her when I don't have to worry about that, because she is a beast and she kicked my butt. So I want to face her again. I would love to face Kristen Statlander. For sure. I was a tag team partner with her at the Levac against the Sea Stars, but I've never faced her one-on-one. I would love to face Becky Lynch because she is actually the person who got me into wrestling. Her takeover match with Sasha Banks was the one that kind of was the light bulb for me. And other than that, I just don't have any other dream matches because right now my slate's blank and I want to face everyone and anyone, no matter the gender, no matter the size. I just kind of want to fight everyone at this point.
And now with your character, prior to this era we're in, how were the young kids? Like, I feel like your character is very relatable to little kids. So were they kind of gravitating towards you? Because I saw you wielding that big sword in some of your Instagram posts, which to me looks really, really cool. And I'm grown. So how are little kids taking to you?
Little kids are great. They love to hold the sword. I always ask if they want to. I actually sell foam swords for you. Normally the little kids buy them every once in a while.
That's amazing. I would buy one.
Right? I mean, they're pretty awesome. They're purple and everything. And I always picture like 2 siblings in the back seat just whacking each other. And the parents like, God, why, Riley? Why? Always. But my character is so geared towards kids. I was a recreation counselor for 7 years. I love kids. So the fact that any little kid would come up to me and actually want to take their picture with me and everything like that just makes my heart so warm and burst. But there are a few kids, including someone named Quentin, who literally stood up against Darius Carter for me, because that's how into the Gladiator of the Geeks he was. He was standing up for my honor. He had like the purple foam sword, and Darius Carter went outside the ring to grab a chair to hit me with, and Quentin just grabbed the end of the chair to try and stop it. And I love that story. His dad told me the story after the match because I had no idea. I was in pain in the middle of the ring and about to get whacked with a chair. And this little kid with purple glasses and a purple foam sword stood up for my honor. I'm like, you are a lieutenant in the Geek Army for sure.
That's adorable.
I love it.
So sweet.
Now you're coming up in a really good time for women's wrestling, a la this show. You know, we've had maybe a couple of repeats as far as people coming on as guests for the second time, but pretty much for 100 something episodes, it's been, you know, a different female wrestler every time, which is amazing time. Have you experienced any, you know, negatives as far as when you started wrestling? You know, stuff that we might not see.
I think at the time that I was coming up, it was going through the phase of still coming out of the diva era, still people not taking women serious, and nothing against the diva era, because it laid the foundation for what we have now. But it's not something that I feel like the Gladiator of the Geeks really would have fit into. I don't do sexy. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know. I'm really bad at that stuff. So when I was coming in and that was kind of phasing out, there was still people who were unsure about women's wrestling and whether they could go toe to toe in training and keeping up with the men. And I know there were moments where people didn't take women's wrestling in my match seriously, where I would go and try and go to someone who was an authoritative figure and ask for critique on my match. And at no point had they watched any of my matches. They were in the locker room. They had watched other guys' matches. They gave feedback on other guys' matches, but at no point did they ever give me feedback, which I'm always looking for. Luckily, at the time, I did have someone who I could go to, and I knew for sure that as long as he wasn't busy, if I asked and said, hey, please watch my match, please give me feedback. I want to learn, I want to grow, especially like I was new. It was probably within the first year of my training that this was going on. He was always willing to watch, and that was my coach, who is Damian Priest in NXT, was great. He was always awesome about doing that, always gave me feedback, but it kind of was a little discouraging to have another authoritative figure who wouldn't do that and who didn't watch and didn't seem to care whether I was in wrestling or not. He didn't care. So I think that mainly was the biggest thing that I've ever run into, is not so much people being completely negative, it's just them not caring, which in a way is worse. But that's the biggest thing that I ever ran into.
Now, talk to us about Damian Priest. Has he given you? Obviously, he critiqued your work, which made you better. Is there any piece of advice that he gave you, or words of wisdom that you kind of carry with you when you enter the ring or you're training?
The biggest thing he ever said to me is you need confidence. And that for me was always something I've always struggled with. It's something probably from when I was young and being bullied. And I've never really had the confidence of, look, this is me and I know I'm good at this. I've always been humble almost to a fault. So him telling me, okay, you're athletic, you know what you can do in the ring, but you need confidence. I've always carried that with me, and I hope that as I continue to grow, I can make him proud and see, oh, she did listen. Like she took my pointers and she went forward and applied them, and I see the confidence now, and I hope he does see that now.
Nice.
Do you have some advice that you would give someone that wants to get into this business and start training? I know you talked a little bit about that confidence, but is there anything that you've learned along your way that could help others?
Just give it your all. Apply yourself in every which way. And the biggest thing I think I've always had in the back of my mind is age. I didn't start training until I was 28. So I've always had that factor of, not only am I a women's wrestler who's overcoming some people who don't care or don't think we can wrestle, but I also have that age of, well, she's getting up there. Is she going to amount to anything? It doesn't matter your age. as long as you're willing to put in the work. Damian Priest is a prime example. He has been wrestling for years and years and years and kept kind of getting that no until he kept working on it and kept getting in better shape and getting better in the ring. And look, now he has a job in WWE. So age is just a number, as long as you don't let that deter you and you apply yourself in every which way. You apply yourself in fitness, nutrition, going to training, learning how to put up and take down a ring, learning the backstage thing, everything possible. For me, learning commentary helped a whole ton. Just learn everything. Be a sponge. No matter how old you are, be a sponge. Learn everything.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And now, with the injuries and stuff like that, you just came back from the injury. What did you learn during your time off, as far as wrestling and for yourself personally?
For myself personally, I needed to make sure that I was doing something athletic or productive. I think the first couple of months were the hardest for me because I literally had one leg taken out from me, and I've always been athletic. And I didn't really know how to wrap my head around it. I've had little injuries, I've had torn shoulder, things that I could kind of work through, but when you can't walk for a while, it messes with your mind a little bit. So for me, the biggest thing was to make sure that I was always doing something that pushed me, whether it was athletically or creatively. I needed some sort of an outlet. And I don't think it really occurred to me until a few months after, when BCW actually brought me into commentary. And I was back at wrestling and being able to apply myself to this world in a different way than I had originally realized. That I was like, oh, I feel so much better to be part of it in some way, to be doing something productive. It just made me feel that much better. So for me, I needed to make sure I had an outlet, and I needed to make sure it was something in the passion that I had, which was wrestling.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining the show. We really, really appreciate it. Where can everybody find you?
So I am on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Riley Shepard. I also have a website, which you mentioned before. It's RileyShepard.com, where I have matches, pictures. I'm hoping to get a calendar and some merch. I do have t-shirts that are available on What a Maneuver. So if you Google What a Maneuver, Riley Shepard, you'll find those. And I always have 8x10s, pins, which grant +3 willpower, and the foam swords available as well. So you just DM me for that.
Awesome. And say your Instagram one more time for the folks.
Sure. The Riley Shepard.
Thank you so much, Riley, for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to, after we're done with this situation, to see you wrestle and see you grow. Definitely, your journey is amazing. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and congrats on the 100+ episodes with a bunch of women. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe.
I should really find out what the total number is.
We need to go and calculate.
All right, so let's hit that news real quick.
Awesome. So really, I mean, I feel like a lot of us saw the news kind of hit this morning. Unfortunately, WWE has furloughed and kind of laid off a lot of performers, and so there's a huge list. I'm not going to go through the list, but a few of them are like Maria Kanellis and Sarah Logan. We have Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows. So it's hitting our industry really, really hard. And so I just want to send good vibes out to everyone and just hope that everyone is doing okay. And we'll get through this.
Now, do you think some of the people who were on the list wanted to be released? And some of the people on the list, I'm personally not surprised was released due to locker room stuff that I've heard. And then some of the people, do you think WWE let them go because of what's going on? Because they're still technically getting a check because they're airing live, they're still selling merch. They just had the pay-per-view. So, do you think they're offloading because they're seeing, because at one point they were hoarding I'm just talking more female wrestlers now. They were hoarding all the wrestlers, and now they're, letting all these people go.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the list that I've seen right now, I know it's going to probably get updated in the next few days, was mostly male wrestlers. But I know that there was some producers and creative people let go as well.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
um, I feel like, we'll never really know unless they come out and say it. I
Right.
think we're in unprecedented times right now. So
Sure.
really, whether it was because of the pandemic or because these changes were going to happen, and their quarter reports come out in the end of
Right.
April, quarter one reports. So there could be too many things lining up that it just is like bad timing.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Yeah.
they're also known for doing those, not this extensive that I can remember, but they're also known for
yeah.
doing almost like a bulk let
Yeah.
go type of
Yeah, I
thing.
mean,
Layoffs.
it's been I'm trying to remember the last time they did this big of a release.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just gonna kind of right now the industry is getting shaken up a little bit, and we're
Hmm.
gonna see people try to figure. I feel like everyone's gonna land on their feet.
Right.
It's just so uncertain, and it's gonna be interesting to watch how other promotions handle this. So
Yeah.
just
Sure.
sending good vibes and hope that we can have wrestling back soon.
Hopefully. So where can everyone find you, Mr. Santos?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at the Bryant Santos. I usually say the, but I feel like now that Riley said it, I'm gonna start saying the.
And where can everybody find you, Emily?
Yes, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emily May Heller.
And make sure that you're following us on all social media at WPW Weekly. As if you have been following us, we have been adding more content. There's a whole bunch of interviews and clips that we haven't put out there. It's going to be put up as well. And we have news, and we have a lot of interesting, phenomenal stuff that's going to be up there. So definitely check it out at WPW Weekly on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button at AfterBuzz TV. And if you're listening to us on any other podcast platforms, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give us 5 stars or better, nothing worse because we're 120 episodes. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining us. You can follow me on everything at TK Trinidad. Till next time, guys. Ciao.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.